Hello and welcome to ET Now. You're watching News Now with me, Shawnee. Let's begin with a roundup of the market this week. Let's take a look at how the Dalal Street performed this week. Nifty snapped a two-week gaining streak to end below 25,500 mark. It was mainly dragged by stocks like Trent and Axis Bank. Sensex too snapped its two-week gaining streak, was down 0.8% this week. On the other hand, broader indices outperformed. Both Nifty mid-cap and small-cap advanced for the second straight week. Sectorally, Nifty Pharma advanced for the second week and emerged as the top sectoral gainer. PSU banks and IT also advanced during the week. On the losing side, Nifty Bank touched the record high but closed in the red, snapping a two-week gaining streak. FMCG and autos also snapped its two-week gaining streaks, and Nifty Realty ended the week as the top sectoral loser. My colleague Rabinder is here with us with the roundup of the markets this week.
Well, Nifty snapped its two-week gaining streak, mainly dragged by Trent and Axis Bank, and Trent was down 10% this week. And if we talk about broader indices, the Nifty mid-cap and small-cap, both the indices closes in green, outperformed the Nifty 50 index, advances for the second consecutive week. And if we talk about sectoral indices, then Nifty Pharma was the top sectoral gainers this week, advances for the second consecutive week, mainly led by Natco Pharma and Laura's Lab. And if we talk about Nifty PSU Bank, then Nifty PSU Bank advances for the second consecutive week, mainly led by Bank of Maharashtra and Indian Overseas Bank. Nifty IT closed in green this week, mainly led by Emphasis and Coforge. And on the flip side, Nifty Realty was a top sectoral loser this week, mainly dragged by Prestige Estate and Lodha, and Nifty Realty Index declined for the second consecutive week. If we talk about Nifty Bank, then Nifty Bank touched a record high level this week but closed in red and snapped two-week gaining streak. Nifty FMCG snapped two-week gaining streak, mainly dragged by United Spirit and Tata Consumer, and Nifty Auto too snapped two-week gaining streak.
Thank you, Rabinder. And as Q1 updates start trickling in, IndusInd Bank reported its quarterly report with net advances falling 3.1% sequentially to 3.34 lakh crore rupees in April to June. On a year-on-year basis, it slipped by almost 4%. The quarterly figures come in the backdrop of a recent high-profile derivative scandal that has rattled investor confidence and market sentiment around the bank. Company's CASA ratio too fell to 31.5% as compared to 32.8% last quarter. And as we have Varun with us to get more of Q1 updates on banks and NBFCs trickling in. Over to you, Varun.
NBFCs, because both Bajaj Finance and L&T Finance are up in trade today after the quarterly updates. Bajaj Finance, no doubt the AUM and the deposit growth are at multi-quarter low, but they are as per guidance. Now the AUM growth has been 25%. The company has guided for 24 to 25% growth in FY26. Also the deposit growth has come at around 15%. The new loans booked, they have grown up by around 23%, and the customer franchisee that has gone up by around 21% on a year-on-year basis. L&T Finance, the total retail disbursement is up by 18% for Q1 FY26. But if you look, it has been aided by the recently acquired gold portfolio. The overall contribution from that was around 1350 crores. Excluding that, the overall growth has been 7.7% for this company. The company has guided for a 20% growth in FY26 in the overall loan portfolio, and this quarter the overall growth in the retail segment has been around 18%. Now let me come to Bank of Baroda. The overall global advances, they have grown by around 12.6%. The overall deposits, global deposits, they have shown a growth of around 9.1%. So it has been a good, decent growth for Bank of Baroda, although not the high 20% growth that the company used to deliver earlier. UCO Bank, the overall growth has been decent. The total deposits that have gone up by around 11.57%, advances have gone up by around 16.6%, but the CASA ratio that has actually fallen down from 37.9% to 36.9% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. RBL Bank, total deposit is up by around 11%, advances up by around 9%. The CASA ratio that has actually come down from 34.1% to 32.5% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But if you look at the overall retail portfolio, the secured loan portfolio that has grown by around 23%, so that's good, and the unsecured retail advances, they have actually gone down by around 7%, but yes, the CASA ratio that has declined. For Bandhan Bank, the biggest highlight was the CASA ratio, which has shown a decline from 1.37% to 27.06% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So that's a very sharp decline for Bandhan Bank on the CASA ratio front. The total deposit, total loan book especially has gone up by around 6.4%. And HDFC Bank, that has just come, an hour before, the overall advances, they are up by 6.7%. The deposit, the CASA deposit, that has gone up by around 8.5%, but on a quarter-on-quarter basis, it is down by around 0.8%, and the overall deposits that have gone up by around 16.2%. So the deposit growth has been good, the advances growth has been good for HDFC, but yes, on a quarter-on-quarter basis, the CASA ratio has, slightly declined. So that's one thing for the highlight in HDFC Bank also.
Thank you, Varun, for all the details. And as we move closer to the earnings season, once again, business updates have started to trickle in for several other managements. We have Trent in focus, where the management has admitted to underwhelming growth trajectory relative to expectations. Snehi is here to tell us more.
We've received numbers coming in from Trent on their Q1 update, wherein they've reported their standalone revenue at 5,061 crore rupees compared to 4,228 crores this time last year, which is an uptick of 19.7% on a year-on-year basis. Now, this is even more disappointing for the stock. We already had the brokerage trigger and the weak AGM commentary coming in. The revenue adds a further round of concern for the company now, because the Bloomberg estimate, which is the consensus estimate across the street, is 5,253 crores, and this reported revenue number as of now for the update is down 4% versus estimates, so slightly disappointing on this front. In terms of store count, they've opened one Westside store and closed 11 Zudio stores in Q1, and closed one Westside and closed 10 Zudio stores as well. If you take a look at the other reason why the stock is down, on the back of weak AGM commentary coming in, where the company has said that growth trajectory for Q1 FY26 seems to be underwhelming given the already strong track record that they have so far. The weak commentary comes from their outlook for their core fashion business, wherein they've given a 20% growth guidance, which is a sharp knock from their 5-year CAGR of 35% growth. So very muted estimates for the core fashion business, and the management has reaffirmed their aspiration of 25% plus growth rate, but given the way the current run rate is, this seems like a tall ask at the moment. On the back of this, Nuvama has downgraded the stock to a hold rating from buy, cut the target price to 5,884 rupees per share compared to 6,627 earlier. They've also cut their FY26 and FY27 revenue and EBITDA estimates as well. For revenue, it's a cut of 5% and 6%, and for EBITDA, it's a cut of 9% and 12% respectively. So these are all the reasons why Trent is under deep pressure in today's trade.
Thank you, Snehi. And we have Abneesh Roy, the Executive Director of Nuvama Institutional Equities, discussing the downgrade coming in on Trent. And he says that the long-term view remains positive still. Listen in.
Term, we do expect Trent to come back, and Trent will also scale up new growth drivers longer term, Zudio Beauty and Star business. We see that longer term, those can become the next big growth drivers, but it will take some time. If you see, some of the other fashion retailers have also said that because of the festival shift, etc., Q1 numbers, there was some weakness in North India. So overall, I think in Trent, fashion business, strong base and overall festival shift, etc., has led to some level of slower growth. There is an urban slowdown, which we have been highlighting. So it's a mix of all this. Long term, I think Trent remains a compounding story. They have a vision to scale up revenue 10x, and already from a FY23 perspective, they have doubled the revenue. So we do see 250 stores addition yearly. If they can come back to a 25-30% kind of growth in the core fashion business and overall, I think the stock can re-rate post that.
And market regulator SEBI has expanded scope of Jane Street investigation. SEBI is examining Jane Street trades on other indices and across exchanges. Anurag Joshi, my colleague, filed this report earlier. Let's go across and listen into his report.
SEBI sources have said that the investigation into trading firm Jane Street will continue. The SEBI's interim order is not a show cause notice, and the order looked at only 18 major days of prima facie bank Nifty index manipulation on the expiry date from a period of Jan 2023 to March 2025. The probe also looked at 3 days of Nifty index manipulation on the expiry date during May 2025. Now the investigation into other expiry days and other indices across exchanges and other potential patterns will need to continue. And SEBI sources say that there should not be any major market impact from this enforcement action. This is because the delta-based future equivalent limits are in place for index options to curb excessive risk-taking without impacting regular participants. In the long run, sources say that the growth in market confidence and a free and fair market and should aid in the responsible investing and the capital formation. So that's what the goal should be according to those sources. And now better enforcement of the existing regulations can pave the way for optimal regulation. But on the flip side, more regulations cannot mean poor enforcement. And the order clearly demonstrates and underscores this. The SEBI had done away with the proposal of intraday limits on index or option positions, and this was because it was confident of the desired objectives of better surveillance and enforcement. Now the SEBI interim order says that Jane Street made illegal gains of 4,843 crore from trading in index options, and its total profit from such trading was almost 44,000 crores. According to the sources, there appears to be a little still too much of concentration on short-term expiries and short-term trading, and extending maturities and nudging more long-term hedging and investments will be ideal for the ecosystem.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Argentina, his third stop of 5 nations tour. This is the first bilateral visit by Indian Prime Minister in 57 years. The Prime Minister will hold wide-ranging talks with Argentinian President to further boost the India-Argentina partnership in key areas including defense, agriculture, mining, oil and gas, renewable energy, trade and investment. In the fourth leg of his visit, PM Modi will travel to Brazil to attend the 17th BRICS Summit, followed by a state visit. In the final leg of his visit, he will travel to Namibia. And after 20 years, MNS Chief Raj Thackeray and Shiv Sena Chief Uddhav Thackeray reunite for a joint rally for a victory celebration after the ruling party Mahayuti government dropped its decision to make Hindi as a compulsory as a third language in schools. Raj Thackeray quit Shiv Sena in 2005 and later launched his own party MNS in 2006. Ukrainian President Zelensky called his conversation with US President Donald Trump fruitful, saying he raised concerns over recent Russian attacks and discussed strengthening Ukraine's air defense. The call came a day after the US passed delivery of key arms to Ukraine, citing concerns over domestic stockpile levels. 24 dead and hundreds of people missing as floods hit the south-central region of Texas later this Friday. 237 people are rescued so far, and search operation is still underway for people who are missing. President Donald Trump said he is in touch with the Texas government and is ordered to ensure this efforts to reduce the damage and also make sure all the necessary measures are taken. Several people injured, including 12 police officers, after a huge explosion at a gas station in Rome. 2 people are critically injured and are currently on the ventilator support. The reason for the blast is unclear, but operation is underway for the same. Former chairman of HUL, Sushim Duta, passed away in Mumbai today. His career began with Hindustan Lever in the 1950s. He took to helm as the chairman of HUL from 1990 to 1996. As HUL, he transformed the FMCG sector, spearheaded mergers and regulations and acquisitions. Duta served as a business leader and rural market revolutionary in over the 21 countries he had worked with. Known for his deep understanding of global markets, especially in Asia, Duta has played key roles in driving strategic growth and operational excellence for multinational corporations. India should treat carefully before opening doors to genetically modified products under any trade agreement with the US. That's the warning from think tank GTRI. It says GM items which carry genes of animal origin could face cultural resistance and lead to unintended contamination in risks. India currently bans GM feed imports like soybean meal and DDGS, while Niti Aayog supports importing of US GM corn for ethanol blending under a strict model. GTRI flags India's weak segregation infrastructure as a major red flag. It also warns that cross-contamination could hurt India's agri-exports to regions like the EU, which, like China, follows a cautious GM policy. BRICS leaders are poised to adopt a tough stance on trade tariffs, the Gaza conflict and climate change, all in sharp contrast to US President Donald Trump's policies. A draft communique being circulated ahead of the summit in Brazil expresses serious concern over unilateral tariff and non-tariff measures. BRICS is said to condemn such steps as coercive and against international law. Sumita Karir is here with us with more details.
Hi, that's right. This is going to be a very significant and crucial gathering so far as the world of geopolitics is concerned. And of course, the Prime Minister, who's on a 5-nation tour, he is going to be attending BRICS Summit, and he will be in Brazil from the 6th and 7th. Currently, he is in Argentina. That's also a crucial visit, given the fact that an Indian Prime Minister is visiting Argentina in over 50 years. So let's understand what's really on the agenda so far as BRICS is concerned. India's agenda at the BRICS, given the fact that next year India assumes chairmanship of a BRICS. So number one, there's going to be a push for reform of global governance. Peace and security again is going to be a crucial aspect that India will rake, and of course counter-terrorism, cross-border terrorism. That is something that India will also rake up, given the fact that we've seen diplomatic missions go out of the country. There have been diplomatic teams that have been leading this effort, and of course at most of these gatherings globally, whether it's in person, whether it's at an event, the Prime Minister and of course ministers of his government have pushed for isolating Pakistan on a global stage so far as terror emanating from its soil is concerned. Then there's going to be strengthening of multilateralism, how that can be done given the fact that there are trade challenges that are emerging due to Donald Trump's tariffs, and of course multilateralism is giving way to more and more of unilateralism in trade. So that's of course going to be one key agenda on the back of Donald Trump's tariffs, and of course that reciprocal tariff deadline coming soon. Responsible use of air is going to be another one, climate action, global health, economic and financial matters. However, what will be interesting to see at the BRICS Summit is whether there will be a clarion call for further de-dollarization. Remember, Vladimir Putin last year when the BRICS Summit happened, he stated that we should adopt for a separate currency for BRICS. He, of course, has been vouching for that. However, India has maintained its stance firmly clear. In fact, Dr. S. Shankar said at Doha Forum in 2024, and I quote, "The US is our largest trading partner. We have no interest in weakening the dollar at all." So these are going to be some significant developments, important things to note at the BRICS Summit, and what really happens as a result of Donald Trump's tariffs, and whether there will be the denunciation will be mentioned in a joint communique or not.
Thank you, Sumita, for that. And the July 4th celebrations turned a bit sweeter for the US President Donald Trump with the first major victory into his second term. After the Congress nod, Trump signed his tax and spending cut bill at the White House July 4th picnic. The legislation, considered a cornerstone of Trump's second-term agenda, passed by the slim 218 and 214 margin following a heated debate on the House floor. It includes provisions to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent, implement broad spending cuts, and fund an aggressive immigration enforcement strategy. But the tariff deadline too looms large. July 9 to be precise, and Trump has already said that he will start dispatching letters to nations who have not signed a deal with the US. India, of course, stands firm, refusing to buckle under pressure. So what does it entail? We talked to experts and listen in to what they had to say.
First of all, it's got through with a razor-thin majority. In the Senate, it was 50-50 when the Vice President broke the tie. You've already spoken about the House of Representatives. Now, there are three concerns about this bill. First of all, the debt. Currently, debt is at about 36 trillion. Now, this could increase it by another 3 trillion. So, can you imagine debt at 40 trillion and debt being about 120% of the US GDP? that's something that can lead to inflation and high interest rates in the future. That's something to worry about, not just for Americans, but also Indian investors in America. Secondly, it looks at high levels of growth. Because you've cut taxes, you think that there can be high growth. Now, if that doesn't happen, then it's a huge banana peel for the economy, because that can create enormous problems. Suddenly, if you find that the levels of spending, consumer spending, is not going up because of the tax cuts, because here are consumers who are also worried about inflation. They are also worried about higher interest rates. Are they going to go out and spend money? That's the other question. So these two things are very worrying at this point. Also, the third thing is that it makes America a more an economy, a country where the difference between the wealthy and the not so affluent is going to widen. That is also a worry, because these tax cuts will definitely help the wealthy. But there have been spending cuts in areas like medical and health and food stamps and things like that. What great benefit do you get by cutting food stamps? Do you get by snipping away at Obamacare? So these are going to hurt the underclass. And the difference between the wealthy and the not so wealthy will become bigger. So these are three things. And the third problem, this has sociological consequences. Let's remember the riots in Los Angeles not that long ago. So these are issues that the president will have to deal with, and his government will have to deal with over a period of time. But for India, the main thing is, you're an Indian. You want to invest in America. But if the interest rates are going to be high, if there is higher inflation, that is possible because of high debt, are you going to invest in America? That's really the question.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely, Srinjoy. Thank you very much for putting that story into perspective on what's really transpiring in the United States. And of course, we'll have to see how soon those rate cuts come in the American economy, given that the face-off and the conflict that Donald Trump has been having with the Fed chair as well. But ladies and gentlemen, let's also listen into what Donald Trump, the US president, said on the passage of the big, beautiful bill.
You know, it was supposed to be in 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 different bills. And I was on one of the fake news shows, and I said, let's do it in one beautiful, big, we want one big, beautiful bill. I said that to this newscaster, and I think a lot of the congressmen and senators were watching, and they said, let's name the bill that, the one big, beautiful bill. And that's what we did. And what we've done is put everything into one bill. It's never happened before. It's the biggest bill of its type in history. We've never had anything like that before. Nothing like that they thought would be possible to get passed. And actually, I liked it because we had so much in there that no matter who you are, there was something in that bill that would make your congressman or your senator or your congresswoman, much more importantly, raise their hand and support. Right, Lisa? So it was something, and it was really something special.
Well, there you have it, the president stating that America is winning. But ladies and gentlemen, the other big story that's shaping up in the United States, and that's going to have ramifications on countries globally. The tariff deadline, well, that's looming large, July 9th. To be precise, that deadline. And of course, Donald Trump has already stated that he will start dispatching letters to nations who have not signed a deal with the United States. Well, India, of course, stands firm. It has refused to buckle under pressure. So what does that really entail? But let me take that question across to Mr. Ramithendu Palit. He's, of course, a senior research fellow and research lead trade and economics at the Indian Institute of South Asian Studies, or ISAS. Mr. Palit, I was trying to sort of get an answer on that front. What exactly is happening in the United States? Is there going to be a mini deal with India, or will that be pushed?
Thank you so much for inviting me to the show. I think the first point, and I will pick up from where Srinjoy left the discussion on the fiscal ramifications of the big, beautiful bill. It's pretty much clear that the focus of the United States policy, insofar as the economic agenda of the Trump government is concerned, looks at tariffs in two respects. One is tariffs are being used to achieve certain foreign policy goals, strategic goals, extracting concessions from partners and also bringing together larger strategic coalitions, which are typical of the United States strategic interests. But the tariffs are also being looked at as sources for revenue. So when you look at what has happened in the legislation that has just been passed by the Congress, there are announcements of big and significant tax cuts. Those cuts need to be replenished by alternative sources of revenue. Otherwise, the debt management problem for the United States is going to become very, very significant. So there is no denying the fact that the United States is looking at tariffs as one way of mobilizing revenues. And by the time we go into the 9th of July, there will be many more countries which will be applied reciprocal tariffs than ones which will not be. For example, if we look at the United States-Vietnam deal that has just come through, the Vietnam exports to the United States will be put a tariff of 20%, which is just a little lower than the baseline reciprocal tariff of 26%. Whereas the transshipment exports from Vietnam to the US will attract 40%. What we are going to see, perhaps for a country like India.
And that's all on this edition of News Now. Thanks so much for watching.